Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Senator Tom Cotton is from the great state of Arkansas. He joins me this morning. Good morning, Senator. Great to have you back.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be on with you.
Would you tell the audience about the letter you sent to the Department of State and the President last week about weapons shipments to Israel? You were once again right. One of my commenters said, Tom Cotton's never wrong, whether it's Wuhan or the Iranian deal and now the weapons. And sure enough, it's been confirmed they started slow walking the weapons.
Yeah, that's right, Hugh. The Biden administration has engaged in bureaucratic sleight of hand in recent months to slow down the delivery of weapons. There's a complicated process by which administrations notify Congress, provide the funding, ship the weapons in any case. And what the Biden administration was doing early on was using some emergency procedures that are permitted under law to get Israel the weapons it needed in the middle of a shooting war against Hamas after the worst atrocity against Jews in World War II. In recent months, it stopped doing that. It's also engaged in some sleight of hand by giving notice to Congress at different times and then not following through with the formal notice, which allows the administration to say, oh, no weapons have been purchased and planned for delivery and are being delayed because they can say that they haven't started that process yet. So the upshot of it all is that Israel is not getting the weapons that it needs as quickly as it needs them, especially relative to the beginning days of this war, which, again, is just another indicator that the Biden administration puts more pressure on Israel than it does on Hamas and is doing everything it can to try to placate and appease all of Iran's terrorist proxies, not just Hamas in the south, but Hezbollah in the north and outlaw rebels in Yemen, to say nothing of Iran itself. That's why we have war raging across the Middle East, which we never had when Donald Trump was president.
Now, Senator Cotton, Secretary Blinken is also reported to have told Defense Minister Gallant from Israel in the State Department yesterday, do not escalate with Hezbollah, to which I would have responded, are you out of your mind? We are not escalating anything, but we are also not going to sit here and let them empty out our north and hit us. I believe the number is more than 4,400 rockets, missiles, and rocket-propelled grenades have been launched into Israel beginning on October 8th when Hezbollah, which is on the north, decided to show solidarity with Hamas in the south in Gaza by basically destroying Israeli life in the 15 kilometers of their northernmost part of their country.
Yeah, Hugh, this is the hallmark of Joe Biden and Tony Blinken's foreign policy, an unfounded fear of escalation. You've seen it in Ukraine for more than 2 years. We've seen it in the Middle East now for the last 10 months. At every turn, when our enemies threaten anything, Joe Biden and Tony Blinken immediately jump up on a table scared to death like an elephant who's seen a mouse, as opposed to telling our weaker adversaries, countries like Iran, terrorists like Hamas and Hezbollah, that if they want to escalate, then we can easily establish what's called escalation dominance. Or to put it in very simple terms, what Sean Connery's character, Jimmy Malone, said in The Untouchables, they bring a knife, you bring a gun. They send one of yours to the hospital, you send one of theirs to the morgue. That's the way you prevent escalation, not Tony Blinken running around the world playing his guitar and pleading with our friends and allies who have been victims of attacks like Ukraine and Israel. Oh, please don't escalate. Please don't escalate.
Let's talk about escalation dominance in Iran. Iran is now, according to the Washington Post reporting, 3 weeks away from breakout, which they can achieve at any time. It might be closer than that. They have tripled their uranium enrichment, which is the critical part. They have ICBMs. They're not very good, but they've got them. They might be able to hit something in Israel like they did earlier this year. It's an Islamist end times regime, Shiite millennialism. Does the United States have to act with its strategic bombers to destroy or set back the Iranian program?
Well, Hugh, unfortunately, I think we can predict what the United States will do as long as Joe Biden is president, and that is nothing. I think when Joe Biden, and for that matter, his old boss Barack Obama, said that they would not allow Iran to get a nuclear bomb on their watch, they meant that very, very precisely and literally. Iran could do everything except turn the proverbial final screw on a nuclear bomb, and they would deem that a success. That wasn't the case when Donald Trump was president. After 4 years of the Trump presidency, really just 2.5 years of the maximum pressure campaign against Iran, Iran was on its knees. So I think we all know what's going to happen for the final 7 months of the Biden administration. But I also think the first Trump term is a pretty good indicator of what America will do in the second term. And when President Trump has said he won't allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, he means it very seriously, not in that very precise technical term.
Let's do some wargaming, Senator Cotton, which is hypothetical. In 1994, North Korea drew close to a nuclear weapon. Bill Clinton blinked. And it is widely and correctly reported he blinked because a conventional war would have killed 500,000 people. Not Americans, but 500,000 people, among them Americans. And I think Joe Biden has already blinked on Iran. But once they get one, they'll get two. When they get two, they'll get four. When they get four, they'll be up to 16. They will not stop. Can we allow them to have it?
No, Hugh, and I mean, I've said this for the 10 years that I've been in the United States Senate. It was one of the first issues that I tackled in the Senate as Obama was racing headlong towards the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. As you say, this is not a normal nation with normal ambitions and grievances. It is a theocratic end times regime that is more than willing to sacrifice its own people and perhaps unleash nuclear war if it can achieve its demented ambitions. And that's just Iran's own ambitions. A nuclear Iran starts a cascade of nuclear proliferation, not just in the Middle East, but ultimately around the world. I mean, if Iran has a nuclear weapon, can Arab nations like Saudi Arabia really go without a nuclear weapon? Or what about Turkey? Iran and Pakistan earlier this year exchanged missile fire across their borders. Pakistan is already a nuclear state to deter India. But if Iran becomes nuclear, surely Pakistan has to further increase its own nuclear stockpile, which then in turn probably necessitates India doing that. That may drive China to accelerate its nuclear program even more than it already has, which then, of course, affects our calculation, Russia's calculation, maybe Japan's as well. So it's not just that Iran with a nuclear weapon is an existential threat to Israel, our closest ally in the world, but it also starts a cascade of nuclear proliferation that makes the world much more dangerous and nuclear weapons being used much more likely than it has been for 80 years.
Senator Cotton, last question. Is the risk of a regional war, conventional regional war with Iran, and all the attendant costs and loss of life and instability, it is not a small thing, but are those risks less than, the same, or greater than the risks of a nuclear Iran with a stockpile of nuclear weapons? No,
Hugh, those risks pale in comparison to the risk of a nuclear Iran. Because, again, Iran has told us what kind of regime it is. It's not that nuclear weapons make Iran dangerous. Iran already is dangerous. It makes them more dangerous. It is the nature of the regime, not the weapon, that makes the risk so grave. Japan is a nuclear threshold state, highly advanced technical economy with lots of nuclear power. Japan could probably develop nuclear weapons in a matter of months. People don't worry about Japan having nuclear weapons because it's not run by crazed ayatollahs. But Iran with nuclear weapons would mean not just the kind of low-boil, occasional wars breaking out that you've seen for 45 years in the Middle East thanks to Iran, or sometimes much bigger wars like the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. It would lead to the use of nuclear weapons in the Middle East almost certainly, sooner or later. And as you see throughout history, an unwillingness to confront aggressors as they gain power and gain strategic advantage doesn't lead to peace. It doesn't promote stability. It only leads to a war of much greater and more devastating scale in the future.
You're correct, unfortunately. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you. We will talk to you on Thursday.